The signal came from deep space on a Tuesday morning when Captain Jake Harrison was drinking his coffee in the command center of the USS Liberty. The sound was unlike anything they had heard before, a series of musical tones that seemed to carry emotion within each note. The ship's communication officer, Lieutenant Amy Parker, worked quickly to decode the transmission while Jake stood behind her chair watching the data flow across multiple screens. "Sir, this is definitely artificial," Amy said while adjusting her headset. "The patterns are too complex to be natural phenomena, and there's definitely a mathematical structure underneath all those musical sounds." Jake nodded and called for Dr. Alan Foster, the ship's linguist and xenobiologist, to come to the bridge immediately. When Alan arrived 10 minutes later, he listened to the recording 3 times before shaking his head in amazement. "Captain, this is a first contact scenario," he said quietly. "These beings are using harmonic frequencies to communicate, and they're trying very hard to make us understand something important." The excitement in his voice was clear, but Jake could also hear concern. The Liberty had been on a routine exploration mission in the Outer Rim territories when they picked up the signal. Jake's orders were simple: investigate any unusual phenomena and report back to Earth Command. But this was far beyond unusual. This was the moment humanity had been preparing for since they first reached the stars. "Can you translate any of it?" Jake asked while the bridge crew gathered around the communication station. Alan worked with Amy for the next 2 hours, using the ship's advanced computers to break down the signal into its basic components. Slowly, a picture began to emerge from the complex mathematics hidden within the beautiful sounds. "They're asking for help," Alan finally announced to the silent bridge. "The message is being broadcast in multiple directions across this entire sector of space. They're desperate, Captain. These beings are facing extinction, and they're calling out to anyone who might be able to assist them." Jake felt his stomach tighten as Alan continued his translation. The beings called themselves the Zentari, and they described their civilization as peaceful traders and scholars who had never known war. They lived on ocean worlds and floating cities and spent their time creating art, studying the universe, and sharing knowledge with other peaceful species they had encountered. But now something terrible was happening to them. A race called the Vex Collective had appeared in their space 6 months ago and begun systematically destroying everything the Zentari had built. The Vex were described as beings made of living crystal who consumed entire planets for their mineral content. They showed no interest in communication or negotiation and seemed to exist only to harvest resources and expand their territory. 12 of their colonies have been destroyed," Alan translated as more of the message became clear. "They estimate their entire civilization will be extinct within 1 year if the attacks continue at the current rate. They've tried everything they can think of. Diplomacy, evacuation, even offering to give the Vex whatever they want. Nothing has worked." Commander Lisa Brooks, the Liberty's tactical officer, studied the tactical data the Zentari had included with their distress call. The information showed Vex ships that were unlike anything in human databases. Their hulls appeared to be made of some kind of crystalline material that could absorb energy weapons and redirect the power back at attackers. Their own weapons seemed to drain the power from enemy ships before destroying them completely. "The Zentari ships don't even qualify as military vessels by our standards," Lisa reported to Jake. "They're basically civilian craft with mining equipment attached. These people have no concept of warfare. They've never had to fight for anything in their entire evolutionary history." Jake walked to the main view screen and stared out at the stars while he considered their options. The Liberty was an exploration vessel, not a warship, but they carried enough firepower to handle most threats they might encounter in unknown space. More importantly, they had something the Zentari apparently lacked: experience with violence and conflict. "Amy, send a message back to the Zentari," Jake ordered. "Tell them we received their distress call and that we're going to help them. Give them our position and ask for coordinates to their homeworld." He paused and looked at Alan. "Make sure they understand we're a different species from a place called Earth. We don't want them to think we're some other alien race they might have contacted." While Amy worked on composing the reply message, Jake opened a secure channel to Earth Command. Admiral Peter Collins appeared on the screen within minutes, his weathered face showing the strain of command. Jake quickly explained the situation and transmitted all the data they had gathered about the Xanthari and the Vex threat. This is exactly the kind of scenario our Xenocontact protocols were designed for, Admiral Collins said after reviewing the information. A peaceful alien civilization facing extinction from an aggressive neighbor. The humanitarian implications alone justify intervention. He paused and looked directly at Jake through the screen. But Captain, these Xanthari have no idea what they're asking for when they request human assistance. Jake understood what the Admiral meant. Humanity had reached the stars after thousands of years of almost constant warfare on Earth. Every human ship was designed with conflict in mind. Every human officer trained to think tactically, and every human solution to problems involved some level of controlled violence. The Xanthari were about to learn what happened when they asked apex predators for help. "I'm dispatching Admiral Susan Martinez with a full relief force," Collins continued. "She take command of the operation once she arrives. Your job is to make contact with the Xanthari and begin gathering intelligence on the Vex. Be careful, Captain. We're walking into an unknown situation with an unknown enemy. These crystalline beings might be more dangerous than the Xanthari realize." The transmission ended and Jake turned back to his crew. They had work to do. The Liberty changed course towards Xanthari space while Amy continued transmitting their response to the alien distress call. Within hours they received a reply that was full of gratitude and hope. The Xanthari were overjoyed that someone had answered their call for help, and they provided detailed navigation data to their homeworld dot as the Liberty jumped to faster-than-light travel toward the Xanthari system. Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to change everything for these peaceful aliens. The Xanthari thought they were calling for help from fellow civilized beings, who would surely understand their peaceful nature and find a diplomatic solution to their problem. They had no idea they had just invited humanity to war. The human fleet arrived at the Xanthari homeworld 3 weeks after the USS Liberty made first contact. Admiral Susan Martinez stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, watching the most beautiful planet she had ever seen slowly rotate before them. Aquatilis was a world of endless oceans broken only by elegant floating cities that seemed to grow from the water itself like living coral formations. "My God," whispered Dr. Alan Foster, who had transferred to the Defender when the relief force arrived. "Look at those structures. They're not built, they're grown. The Xanthari have learned to work with their environment instead of fighting against it." The floating cities were connected by graceful bridges that glowed with soft bioluminescent light, creating patterns across the ocean surface that looked like artwork rather than transportation networks. Admiral Martinez had brought 12 ships with her, each one representing the best of human military technology. Compared to the delicate beauty of the Xanthari cities, the human vessels looked like instruments of war, which is exactly what they were. Every line of their hulls spoke of speed, firepower, and the ability to survive in hostile environments. The first meeting between humans and Xanthari took place in orbit above Aquatilis in a specially prepared diplomatic facility. Captain Jake Harrison accompanied Admiral Martinez as they were welcomed aboard the Xanthari space station by a delegation of the most graceful beings either human had ever encountered. The Xanthari were tall and slender with translucent skin that revealed the gentle flow of luminescent fluids within their bodies. They moved like they were swimming through the air, and their large eyes reflected an intelligence that seemed ancient and wise. When they spoke, their voices created harmonious sounds that made even simple greetings feel like music. "We are eternally grateful that you have come to help us," said the lead Xanthari diplomat, whose name translated roughly to Veltar. "Your species must be very wise and peaceful to have developed the technology necessary for interstellar travel. Surely you understand that violence only creates more violence and that all conflicts can be resolved through patient dialogue and mutual understanding." Admiral Martinez exchanged a quick glance with Jake before responding. "We're here to help. You survived, Veltar. But first we need to understand exactly what you're facing. Can you show us the battle records from your encounters with the Vex?" What the humans saw in the Xanthari recordings made them understand why these peaceful beings were losing so badly. The Vex ships appeared in each system like crystalline meteors, their faceted hulls reflecting light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. They moved with mechanical precision and showed no response to Xanthari attempts at communication. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Parker studied the tactical recordings with growing disbelief. "Admiral, the Xanthari aren't even fighting back," she reported. "Quietly. They're trying to shield their civilians and evacuate population centers, but they're not shooting at the Vex ships. Their idea of defense is to put themselves between the enemy and their cities." Dr. Foster worked closely with Xanthari scientist Aquanum to understand their technology and philosophy. The revelation was stunning. The Xanthari had literally never developed weapons of any kind. Their entire evolutionary history had taken place on worlds without predators or resource scarcity. The concept of deliberately harming another living being was so foreign to them that they couldn't even imagine it as a possibility. "They've been trying to communicate with the Vex for 6 months?" Foster explained to Admiral Martinez during their daily briefing. "They keep sending messages explaining that there's enough space and resources for everyone in the galaxy. They honestly believe that the Vex are attacking them because of some kind of misunderstanding." Colonel Rita Stone led a survey team to examine the sites of recent Vex attacks. What they found made even experienced human soldiers feel sick. The Vex didn't just destroy Xanthari colonies, they consumed them completely. Every trace of organic life was stripped away, and the planetary surfaces were left looking like polished crystal formations. "They're strip mining entire worlds while the inhabitants are still alive," Stone reported to the Admiral. "The Vex appear to feed on mineral content, but they don't bother waiting for evacuation to complete. They just start eating the planet from the surface down." The recordings showed Xanthari civilians singing mournful songs as their cities were dissolved around them. "Still hoping until the final moment that the attackers might listen to reason, General Kevin?" Ross met with the Xanthari High Council to discuss possible strategies for dealing with the Vex threat. The aliens were eager to hear human suggestions for peaceful resolution of the conflict. They had prepared extensive cultural and psychological profiles of the Vex based on their behavioral observations and were certain that the right diplomatic approach would end the violence. "Perhaps your people have encountered similar situations before," suggested Council Leader Meredith. "You must have developed wisdom about resolving conflicts through understanding and compromise. We know that any species capable of interstellar travel must be highly evolved and peaceful by nature." Ross found himself in the uncomfortable position of explaining that humans had reached the stars precisely because they were not peaceful by nature. "Council Leader, my species has been fighting wars for our entire recorded history. We've learned to travel between stars specifically because we needed to find more resources to fight over. We're very good at violence." The Xanthari delegation fell silent as the translation systems converted Ross's words into their harmonic language. Several of them began producing distressed musical tones that sounded like questions and confusion. The concept that an advanced civilization might be based on conflict rather than harmony was apparently beyond their ability to comprehend. Commander Lisa Brooks analyzed the Vex technology with the Defender science team and reached some disturbing conclusions. "Admiral, these crystalline beings are operating on a completely different set of principles than anything we've encountered," she reported. "Their ships can absorb energy weapons and redirect the power. Their hulls are self-repairing. And they seem to operate as a collective intelligence rather than individual units." The more the humans learned about their enemy, the more they understood why the Xanthari had been helpless against them. The Vex were essentially a living mining operation that treated other forms of life as obstacles to resource extraction. They couldn't be reasoned with because they didn't recognize other species as anything more than inefficient mineral processing systems. Dr. Helen Carter, the fleet's military psychologist, studied the Vex behavioral patterns and made a recommendation that shocked the Xanthari observers. "Admiral, these beings respond only to superior force," she concluded. "They attack when they perceive weakness and withdraw when they encounter resistance. The Xanthari's peaceful responses are actually encouraging more aggressive behavior. As the human assessment continued, the Xanthari began to realize that their rescuers were unlike anything they had imagined. The humans discussed concepts like acceptable casualties, tactical nuclear deployment, and strategic resource denial with the same calm efficiency that Xanthari used to plan cultural festivals. Admiral Martinez called a final planning meeting. As reports arrived that a large Vex force had been detected heading toward the Aquatilis system. Ladies and gentlemen, we have approximately 48 hours before the enemy arrives, she announced to her staff officers. I want all ships prepared for combat operations. We're going to show these crystal miners what happens when they threaten our friends. The Xanthari delegation watched the human preparations with growing unease. They had asked for help from fellow civilized beings and instead found themselves allied with creatures who planned for war as naturally as breathing. The humans spoke of violence not as a last resort but as a tool to be applied with precision and overwhelming force. As the Vex fleet approached Aquatilis, the Xanthari finally began to understand what they had done when they broadcast their distress call across the galaxy. They had asked for salvation and received it, but the price was going to be higher than anything they had imagined possible. The Vex attack fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Aquatilis system like a collection of deadly jewels falling through space. Their crystalline ships reflected the light of the local star in patterns that created an almost hypnotic display of colors and shadows. To the Xanthari watching from their cities below, the enemy vessels looked like beautiful death approaching their world. Dr. Tony June commanded the destroyer UES Vengeance and was the first human to engage the enemy. His ship had been positioned in the outer system as an early warning sensor, but Cheen had other plans when the Vex appeared. All hands to battle stations, he announced calmly over the ship's communication system. Deploy nuclear mines around. Grid coordinates 7 through 12. Set proximity fuses for maximum area denial. The Xanthari observers aboard the human ships watched in growing horror as Chun's crew began launching weapons that contained enough destructive power to level entire cities. The humans were deploying tactical nuclear devices as casually as the Xanthari might release communication buoys. Each mine was capable of destroying multiple enemy vessels, and the humans were scattering dozens of them throughout the system's approach routes. Captain Chun, what are those devices? Asked Veltar, who had been assigned as a liaison to observe human tactics. His harmonic voice carried overtones of confusion and distress as he watched the mine deployment on the ship's tactical displays. Standard area denial weapons, Chun replied without taking his eyes off his command screens. Each mine contains a fusion warhead with approximately 50 kilotons of yield. We use them to channel enemy movements into kill zones where our main weapons can be more effective. He spoke as if he were describing routine maintenance procedures rather than weapons of mass destruction. Colonel Rita Stone coordinated the defensive preparations on Aquatilis itself while the space battle developed overhead. She had convinced the Xanthari to evacuate their most vulnerable population centers, but not for the reasons the aliens thought. Stone wasn't planning to protect civilian areas. She was planning to use them as tactical advantages. Set up kinetic bombardment platforms on the abandoned city structures, Stone ordered her engineering teams. If the Vex try to land ground forces, we want those positions to become death traps. Also, prepare the orbital mirrors for combat laser configuration. We might need to use the planet's own solar collection system as a weapon. The Xanthari engineers working with Stone's teams became increasingly disturbed as they realized what the humans were doing. The peaceful aliens had built their cities to harmony with their ocean environment, creating structures of incredible beauty and ecological balance. The humans were converting those same structures into weapon platforms and killing grounds. Commander Nick Bell led the first wave of human fighters against the approaching Vex fleet. His squadron of 12 attack craft had been designed for deep space combat, and each one carried enough firepower to destroy a Xanthari city. But it wasn't their weapons that shocked the alien observers. It was their tactics. Listen up, people, Bell transmitted to his squadron as they accelerated toward the enemy formation. These crystal bastards think they're invincible because they can absorb energy weapons. Let's show them what kinetic penetrators can do to their pretty hulls. Remember, we're not trying to capture anything or leave survivors for interrogation. This is extermination protocol. The human fighters attacked the Vex ships, using methods that violated every principle of civilized warfare the Xanthari had ever imagined. Instead of attempting to disable enemy vessels or target military systems, the humans aimed for maximum destruction and psychological impact. They coordinated suicide runs against Vex command ships, used false retreat maneuvers to draw enemies into ambush positions, and deliberately targeted the crystalline beings' communication networks to spread confusion and panic. Dr. Helen Carter monitored the battle from the Defender's command center while analyzing Vex behavioral patterns in real time. Her psychological profile of the enemy was being updated continuously as new data flowed in from the combat zones. "Admiral, the Vex operate on hive mind principles," she reported to Martinez. "If we can disrupt their networked consciousness, their individual units become much less effective." "What do you recommend, Doctor?" Martinez asked while watching the tactical displays show human forces systematically dismantling the Vex attack formation. "Sonic weapons tuned to frequencies that interfere with their crystalline structure," Carter replied immediately. "I've been working with the engineering teams to modify our communication arrays. We can broadcast disruption signals that should cause cascading failures in their shared consciousness network." The Xanthari delegation aboard the Defender listened to this conversation with mounting horror. The humans were casually discussing methods of psychological warfare and technological disruption that would cause untold suffering to their enemies. Even worse, they were developing these tactics in real time during actual combat and implementing them with ruthless efficiency. Major Steve Williams led a boarding assault against a damaged Vex command vessel that had been disabled by human kinetic weapons. His Special Forces team wore powered armor that allowed them to survive in the vacuum of space while carrying enough personal firepower to level city blocks. Their mission was intelligence gathering, but their methods were pure human warfare. "Breach and clear, people," Williams commanded as his team cut through the crystalline hull of the enemy ship. "Remember that these things don't take prisoners and they don't surrender. Anything that moves gets terminated. We're here to extract data cores and biological samples, not to make friends." The human soldiers moved through the Vex ship like a deadly storm, using shaped charges to blast through internal barriers and employing weapons specifically designed to shatter crystalline structures. They showed no mercy to wounded enemies and took no prisoners. Every Vex they encountered was killed immediately and efficiently. Back on the Defender, the Xanthari watched live footage from Williams's assault team with growing nausea. The humans were conducting their attack with the same methodical precision that Xanthari used for scientific research, but instead of gathering knowledge, they were gathering death. Every move was calculated for maximum lethality and minimum risk. To human personnel, Captain LaVara Bennett commanded a deep space patrol that intercepted Vex reinforcements attempting to reach the battle zone. Her ship, the UES Hunter, had been modified specifically for long-range interdiction missions and carried experimental weapons that pushed the boundaries of human military technology. "Target their drive systems first," Bennett ordered her weapons officer as they closed with a formation of 6 Vex ships. "I want them stranded out here where they can't call for help or retreat to warn their friends. Then we take them apart, piece by piece, and see how their technology works." Bennett's tactics involved disabling enemy vessels and then systematically destroying them while conducting detailed sensor scans of their weapons and defensive systems. She was fighting a battle while simultaneously conducting military research, gathering data that would make future human attacks even more devastating. The Xanthari observers realized, with growing dread, that the humans weren't just fighting to defend Aquatilis. They were using the battle as a learning experience. Every engagement was being recorded and analyzed. Every Vex weapon system was being studied and countered. The humans were treating their first contact with an alien enemy as an opportunity to improve their own capabilities for future wars. Admiral Martinez coordinated the overall battle from the Defender's command center while monitoring reports from all human units across the system. Her tactical displays showed a systematic dismantling of the Vex attack force that was proceeding exactly according to plan. The enemy had been lured into engagement zones where human weapons could be most effective. Status report, all units, Martinez requested as the battle entered its final phase. Vengeance reporting 15 enemy vessels destroyed with nuclear mines, Chun replied. No human casualties. Ground forces reporting all Vex landing attempts repelled, Stone added. Enemy ground units terminated with extreme prejudice. Fighter squadrons reporting mission success, Bell concluded. Vex command structure has been completely disrupted. The Xanthari delegation sat in stunned silence as they listened to these reports. In less than 6 hours, the humans had completely destroyed a Vex attack force that would have taken months to defeat their homeworld. But the methods used had been so brutally efficient that the peaceful aliens were beginning to wonder if they had made a terrible mistake in asking for human assistance. As the last Vex ship was destroyed and the immediate threat to Aquatilis ended, Admiral Martinez turned to address the Xanthari observers. The system is secure, she announced, but this was just a scouting force. The real Vex fleet is still out there somewhere, and they'll be back with reinforcements once they realize what happened here. Veltar struggled to process what he had witnessed. Admiral Martinez, your people fought with such violence and destructive power. Is this how all human conflicts are resolved? Martinez considered the question carefully before responding. Veltar, when someone threatens our friends or our interests, we respond with overwhelming force designed. 3 months after the first battle at Aquatilis, Admiral Martinez had transformed the peaceful Xanthari system into a fortress of human military engineering. Weapons platforms orbited every populated world, automated defense networks monitored all approaches to the system, and human patrol fleets conducted aggressive reconnaissance missions deep into former Vex territory. The beautiful floating cities of the Xanthari now existed under the protection of humanity's war machine, Major Steve Williams received new orders that would have been impossible to imagine before first contact with the aliens. His special forces unit was being deployed on search and destroy missions across 17 different star systems, hunting down Vex installations and eliminating them with extreme prejudice. The humans had decided that defensive warfare was insufficient. They were taking the fight directly to their crystalline enemies. Gentlemen, our mission parameters have changed, Williams briefed his team aboard the stealth ship UES Shadow. We're no longer protecting Xanthari space. We're conducting offensive operations designed to eliminate the Vex threat permanently. Intelligence indicates major enemy installations in the Kepler 442 system. We're going to infiltrate their command structures and deploy biological weapons, specifically designed to dissolve silicon-based life forms. The Xanthari liaison assigned to Williams's unit, a gentle being named Qualeth, listened to this briefing with growing horror. Major Williams, you are planning to use weapons that target the basic biological structure of an entire species. This is genocide. Williams looked at the alien with the patience of someone explaining basic mathematics to a child. Qualeth, the Vex have already demonstrated that they intend to completely exterminate your people and consume your worlds. We're simply applying the same standards to them. It's called reciprocity. Captain LeVar Bennett had been promoted to Commodore and given command of a deep space battle group tasked with systematic destruction of Vex mining operations. Her ships moved through space like a pack of hunters, identifying enemy installations and eliminating them with coordinated strikes that left nothing behind but crystalline debris and radiation signatures. Target acquired, Bennett announced, as her sensors detected a massive Vex mining complex around a red dwarf star. Deploying Scorched Earth Protocol. I want that entire operation reduced to cosmic dust. If the Vex want these mineral resources, we're going to make them too expensive. to obtain. Bennett's battle group included ships carrying weapons that had been specifically developed to counter Vex technology. Gravity bombs that could collapse crystalline structures, sonic disruptors that shattered silicon-based materials and antimatter. Warheads that left nothing behind but empty space. The humans were fighting a war of extinction against an enemy they had never met before first contact. Dr. Roy Adams worked in laboratories aboard the research vessel UES Prometheus, developing new categories of weapons based on captured Vex technology and Xanthari bioluminescent systems. His creations were beautiful in their deadly elegance, combining the artistic sensibilities of the peaceful aliens with the lethal efficiency of human military engineering. Admiral, I've successfully weaponized the Xanthari bioluminescent communication system, Adams reported to Martinez during their weekly weapons development briefing. The resulting devices use the enemy's own energy absorption capabilities against them. When a Vex ship tries to drain power from these weapons, it triggers cascading failures throughout their crystalline matrix structure. The Xanthari scientists, who had originally developed the bioluminescent technology for peaceful communication, watched in fascinated horror as humans perverted their life's work into instruments of mass destruction. The weapons were undeniably beautiful, creating spectacular light displays as they systematically disintegrated enemy vessels, but their purpose was absolute annihilation. Colonel Frank Murphy commanded the human prisoner interrogation facility that had been established on a moon orbiting Aquatilis. The facility remained empty because the humans had quickly discovered that the Vex did not take prisoners and showed no interest in prisoner exchange agreements. This had simplified human tactical doctrine considerably. Prime Scholar Aquilum. There are no Vex prisoners because we don't take prisoners from species that don't honor the conventions of civilized warfare, Murphy explained to the horrified Xanthari delegation. The Vex have demonstrated that they view other life forms as resources to be consumed. We're treating them according to the same standards they've established. Ecolum's harmonic voice carried deep distress as he responded. Colonel Murphy, surely some of these crystalline beings could be reasoned with or educated about peaceful coexistence. Your people are conducting systematic extermination without even attempting communication or understanding. Murphy's expression remained professionally neutral as he accessed his tactical computer and displayed recent combat footage. Scholar, these recordings show Vex forces continuing to attack and consume Xanthari civilians even while under heavy fire from our forces. They don't retreat, they don't surrender, and they don't negotiate. They fight until they're destroyed or until they've consumed everything in their path. The footage showed crystalline warriors literally eating their way through Xanthari city structures while human weapons fire exploded around them. Even when mortally damaged, the Vex continued their consumption activities until their forms finally collapsed into inert mineral fragments. There was no behavior that could be interpreted as fear, pain, or desire for self-preservation. Commander Beth Taylor developed what human military planners called the Prometheus Protocol, a strategic concept that represented the ultimate expression of human warfare doctrine. Her plan involved simultaneous attacks on every known Vex installation across multiple star systems, using coordinated strikes designed to prevent any possibility of enemy regrouping or retaliation. Admiral Martinez, the Prometheus Protocol is ready for implementation, Taylor reported during a classified briefing attended only by senior human officers. We've identified Vex installations in 17 systems and we have sufficient forces to hit all of them within a 6-hour window. The attack will use a combination of antimatter warheads, gravity bombs, and engineered viruses that specifically target silicon-based molecular structures. Martinez studied the tactical projections. While considering the implications of Taylor's plan, the Prometheus Protocol wasn't designed to defeat the Vex. It was designed to erase them from existence so completely that no trace of their civilization would remain. It was the kind of thorough destruction that only humans seemed capable of conceiving and implementing. The Xanthari Council convened emergency sessions as reports of human military activities reached them from across known space. The peaceful aliens had begun monitoring human communications and were horrified by what they discovered. The humans discussed concepts like total war, acceptable casualty ratios, and strategic genocide with the same calm professionalism that Xanthari used to plan cultural exchanges. Council Leader Murdith: "The humans are not fighting to protect." U.S., reported Intelligence Coordinator Velanash. "They are fighting to completely eliminate an entire species from the galaxy." Their military documents refer to permanent threat removal and preventive extinction protocols. These concepts have no equivalent in our language because we never imagined such things were possible. General Carl Foster supervised the final preparations for the Prometheus Protocol while coordinating with human forces scattered across dozens of star systems. His command post aboard the UES Titan had become the nerve center for the largest military operation in human history, involving more ships and weapons than had ever been deployed in a single coordinated action. All units report ready for simultaneous strike operations, Foster announced as the final preparations were completed. Prometheus Protocol will commence in 36 hours. Target packages have been distributed and confirmed. Remember, people, this is not a conventional military engagement. This is species extinction. We're erasing the Vex from existence to ensure they never threaten anyone again. The Xanthari observers who had been permitted to monitor human military communications finally understood the full scope of what their rescuers were planning. The humans weren't content to drive the Vex away from Xanthari space or negotiate a peace treaty. They were implementing a final solution that would guarantee the crystalline species could never threaten anyone again. Dr. Nancy Ross conducted psychological evaluations of human personnel involved in the anti-Vex operations and found results that disturbed the Xanthari mental health specialists. The human soldiers and officers showed no signs of trauma, guilt, or emotional distress despite participating in what amounted to genocide on an interstellar scale. The humans view this as a necessary job that must be completed thoroughly, Ross explained to a gathering of Xanthari psychologists. They don't experience moral conflict about destroying an enemy that threatens their allies. To them, the Vex represent a problem that requires a permanent solution, and they're implementing that solution with maximum efficiency. The peaceful aliens struggled to comprehend how an entire species could participate in such massive destruction without experiencing psychological consequences. The humans treated interstellar. The Prometheus Protocol began at exactly 0800 hours Galactic Standard Time when Commander Beth Taylor transmitted the execution order to human forces positioned across 17 star systems. In that single moment, the largest coordinated military strike in galactic history commenced with the precision and ruthless efficiency that had become humanity's signature in warfare. Antimatter warheads detonated simultaneously around Vex installations, from the core worlds to the outer rim territories. Each explosion released enough energy to sterilize entire planetary surfaces, but the humans had calculated their targeting with mathematical precision. Every Vex mining operation, command center, and population cluster was hit within the same 6-hour window, preventing any possibility of warning or evacuation. Captain Tony Chun commanded the final assault on the primary Vex homeworld, a crystalline planet that had served as the central hub for their species' expansion across the galaxy. His battle group approached the world like harbingers of absolute destruction, carrying weapons specifically designed to crack planetary crusts and expose the molten core beneath. All ships commence planetary bombardment, Chun ordered as his fleet achieved optimal firing position. Deploy seismic charges at calculated stress points. I want this world broken apart completely. No survivors, no infrastructure, no possibility of recovery or regrouping. The Xanthari observers aboard human ships watched in stunned horror as humanity demonstrated the ultimate expression of their military capabilities. The weapons used against the Vex homeworld were planet killers, devices so destructive that they had never been employed in human conflicts, because no human enemy had ever warranted complete annihilation. Dr. Roy Adams monitored the effectiveness of his bioluminescent weapons during the final assault. studying how the beautiful devices systematically dissolved Vex defensive systems. His weapons created spectacular aura effects as they interacted with the crystalline atmosphere of the enemy homeworld, turning the destruction of an entire species into an artistic display of light and color. Admiral Martinez, the bioluminescent cascade weapons are performing beyond specifications. Adams reported with professional satisfaction. The Vex defensive grids are experiencing total molecular breakdown. Their ability to absorb and redirect energy is being turned against them with 100% efficiency. General Carl Foster coordinated the systematic destruction from his command post aboard the UES Titan, monitoring reports as human forces eliminated every trace of Vex civilization across known space. His tactical displays showed real-time updates as installations were destroyed. Databases were purged, and even cultural artifacts were systematically erased to prevent any possibility of species revival. Sector 7 reports complete sterilization. Of all Vex installations, came the first report. Sector 12 confirms total elimination of enemy mining operations, followed another. One by one, the reports flooded in as human forces methodically erased an entire species from existence with the thoroughness that only humanity seemed capable of achieving. The crystalline beings that had once threatened to consume the galaxy were being consumed themselves by weapons designed specifically to target their fundamental biology. Engineered viruses dissolved silicon-based structures at the molecular level, while gravity bombs collapsed their installations into compressed matter. Nothing was left to chance and nothing was spared. Major Steve Williams led the final ground assault on the last Vex command facility, a massive crystalline structure that had served as their central coordination hub. His Special Forces team moved through the complex like death itself, using sonic disruptors and molecular dissolution weapons to eliminate every trace of the enemy's existence. All data cores secured and ready for destruction, Williams reported, as his team completed their sweep of the facility. Biological samples have been collected for analysis. Recommend immediate implementation of total sterilization protocol. The humans were not content to simply destroy their enemies. They wanted to understand them completely before erasing them from history. Every aspect of Vex technology, biology, and culture was being studied and cataloged before being systematically destroyed. It was scientific genocide conducted with academic precision. Commodore Lavra Bennett commanded the final cleanup operations as human forces swept through former Vex territories to ensure complete elimination of the species. Her ships carried sensors calibrated to detect even microscopic traces of crystalline life forms, and her crews were authorized to use any level of force necessary to achieve absolute sterilization. Detecting residual Vex biosignatures in the asteroid belt of System 47 Gamma, Bennett reported during one of the final sweeps, deploying solar flares to superheat all mineral deposits. If there are any Vex hiding in those rocks, they won't survive the next 10 minutes. The thoroughness of human military operations horrified the Zenthari observers who had been permitted to monitor the Prometheus protocol. The humans weren't just winning a war, they were conducting species extinction. With industrial efficiency, every planet that had ever hosted Vex activity was being sterilized down to the bedrock. Dr. Helen Carter compiled the final psychological profile of the Vex, based on data collected during their destruction. Her analysis revealed that the crystalline beings had indeed operated as a hive mind collective with no individual consciousness or capacity for negotiation. They had been, in essence, a living mining operation that viewed other species as obstacles to resource extraction. Admiral Martinez. Final analysis confirms that peaceful coexistence with the Vex was impossible, Carter reported. They possessed no individual identity, no cultural concepts beyond resource acquisition, and no biological capacity for empathy or negotiation. They were essentially a galactic parasite that would have continued expanding until all available matter was consumed. Admiral Martinez reviewed the final battle reports as the last Vex installations were confirmed destroyed. The operation had been completed in less than 1 week with 0 human casualties and absolute mission success. An entire species had been eliminated from the galaxy with the same efficiency that humans might use to exterminate an infestation of harmful insects. The Xanthari delegation aboard the human flagship watched the final reports with a mixture of gratitude and terror. Prime Scholar Aquilum struggled to find words in his harmonic language to express what his people were feeling as they realized the scope of what their rescuers had accomplished. Admiral Martinez, your people have saved our entire civilization, Aquilum said with sounds that carried deep emotional complexity. But the methods you have used to achieve this salvation are beyond our ability to comprehend. You have erased an entire species from existence as if they were never born. Martinez nodded thoughtfully as she considered the alien's words. Scholar, the Vex represented an existential threat, not just to your people but to all organic life in this sector of the galaxy. They couldn't be reasoned with, they couldn't be contained, and they couldn't be reformed. The only solution was complete elimination. Dr. Nancy Ross conducted final psychological evaluations of human personnel who had participated in the Prometheus Protocol and found results that confirmed the Xanthari's worst fears about their rescuers. The human soldiers and officers showed no signs of trauma, regret, or emotional disturbance, despite having participated in the complete extinction of an alien species. The human military personnel view this operation as a successful completion of assigned objectives, Ross reported to the Xanthari psychological specialists. They experienced satisfaction at having protected their allies and eliminated a threat, but no guilt or moral conflict about the methods employed. To them, species extinction is simply another tool in their tactical arsenal. The peaceful aliens finally understood that they had been rescued by beings who were fundamentally different from anything they had ever imagined possible. Humans didn't just fight wars. They fought to achieve absolute victory through any means necessary. The concept of proportional response or limited conflict was alien to human military doctrine. Ambassador Lucy Grant attempted to explain human warfare philosophy to the increasingly disturbed Xanthari Council during the post-war debriefing sessions. Her task was impossible because the concept she needed to convey had no equivalent in Xanthari language or experience. Council members, humans evolved on a world where survival required constant competition and conflict, Grant explained while the Xanthari struggled to understand. We developed strategies like total war, mutually assured destruction, and preventive genocide because our history taught us that incomplete victories often lead to future threats. When we eliminate an enemy, we eliminate them completely. The Xanthari Council convened an emergency session as the full implications of human military capability became clear. They had witnessed the complete destruction of a species that had seemed unstoppable, accomplished by beings who treated interstellar genocide as routine military operations. The peaceful aliens began to question whether their salvation had come at too high a price. Council Leader Murdath addressed the human delegation with harmonics that conveyed deep gratitude mixed with profound unease. Admiral Martinez, the Xanthari? People are eternally grateful for your intervention on our behalf.